In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Giver of life, amen. Please be seated. Well, good morning. Wonderful to see you all here. I suppose it should not be surprising that Jesus, being the genius that he was, every once in a while would say things that are completely incomprehensible to the rest of us. And so it is with this parable of the dishonest steward. I take it from me, there are people, really, really smart people, who have devoted their lives to understanding the words of Jesus, who look at this parable and they just shake their heads. They're like, I have no idea. And then there's all sorts of theories about what Jesus was trying to say. None of them are particularly convincing, and none of them are at all inspiring in terms of like a Sunday sermon type lesson. I can talk about the parable, though, for quite a while if you'd like me to. I'm just saying I don't think it's all that inspiring or helpful. So it occurred to me, I heard about a priest friend of ours, L.A. King, who was at St. Stephen's Sebastopol. And she said, she got up there one Sunday a few weeks ago and said something similar to what I just said about a parable, but actually a parable that I think is more interesting. But anyway, and she said, so the parable, actually she said, the parable is pretty self-explanatory. Just, read it. You don't need a priest with a PhD to tell you what it means. It's pretty clear. So let's talk about what's on your minds. And she said, let's play a game called Stump the Priest, and you ask me any question and I'll answer it. And I'm not going to play Stump the Priest because I'm afraid, but I am interested in what's on your minds. What are you thinking about these days? There's a lot going on. There's the Pope, who's just come out with a very interesting interview, and a lot of people are taking a lot of encouragement and hope from that. There's the terrible violence going on around the world, the people being held hostage in Kenya as we speak. There's the Anglican Communion and the Episcopal Church, and this church in particular, and our company of friends and lovers and friends, and so what would you like to talk about? What's on your minds? Any questions about the readings? We can talk about the readings. What's burning in your heart? What is like the thing? Like you've always wanted to know the answer to this question. Whatever, anything. Yes, Gene.
Even in today's reading, there is a point that says that you cannot serve God and wealth. So what about those of us that are trying to make a living for ourselves, and whether or not, how far do we go? Yeah,
good question. Are you serving wealth?
No.
Well, then you're good. Right? I don't see you bowing down to an altar of gold and, devoting your life to ruining the world so that you can enrich yourself. If you were, we could talk about that. That would.
But a lot of our times is devoted to accumulating that wealth, so we can, so we can use it, but we're still devoting so much time to accumulating that when we could be devoting that time to, I guess, other godly things.
Right. Well, this is the thing upon which every Christian in good conscience has to find that place in their own life that feels right for them. But, I think it's important to remember that it's one thing to work hard in order to live a healthy, happy life so that you're strong enough to serve the world and others, which I know you do, or to, be greedily accumulating the world's riches so that you can drive a Ferrari and run over homeless people, right? And I don't know anybody in this room who does that. So, but there are gradations, there are shades of gray, and we all have to struggle with that. And I don't mean to be flip about it, because it's a really, really difficult question that we all wrestle with. I don't know if you all remember, a few years ago, my wife bought a shiny sports car. It was really beautiful. I loved it. Actually, she leased it. She didn't buy it. And every once in a while, she would have to drive the 10-year-old minivan that was my car for some reason, and so I would get to drive her shiny sports car, which I loved. But I was troubled by what it looked like, you know? I was. It was not necessarily a beautiful sight to see a priest in a collar driving a beautiful sports car. And I think about the Pope and his, his 20-year-old Renault, which is much closer to my 12-year-old Honda now that I'm driving now, and I feel better about it, you know? And I think we have to find that place where we feel good, where our lifestyle makes us feel good about our place in the world, and we can stand up before God and say, you have all of it, you own all of it, it's all yours. If it's okay with you, I'd like to drive a 12-year-old Honda. Is that all right? And, yeah, sure, go, And you drive like a 1963 Ford GTO. What is it, Pontiac?
That's up for sale.
Okay, it's up for sale. So, thank you, Jean. Good. Jean Marie.
So, I've recently become aware that there are young people in our community here locally, but also internationally, that are choosing suicide as an option. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, what are we as leaders and aware humans missing, and is there something we need to be thinking about that we're not?
Beautiful, Jean Marie. Thank you. Yeah, it is true that suicide among young people is the highest it's ever been recorded. And it does give you pause. And in fact, I was talking to a young person today at Open Table at our breakfast program this morning. I sat down and he just started talking to me, and it was clear to me that a huge issue for him was this battle between hope and despair. And I found myself reflecting with him on actually the words of the Pope in that long interview. Did anybody read the full text of his interview? Which was quite interesting and inspiring, in fact. And at one point the interviewer said, are you optimistic? And he said, actually, I'm uncomfortable with the word optimism, because optimism is a state of mind. It's a psychological state, right? It has to do with how you're feeling. He says, I find more meaning in hope. Hope is a connection with God that lives within us, that cannot ever die, that is transcendent and lifts us beyond ourselves and whatever psychological state we're in to live lives of promise and devotion and love. I'm kind of elaborating on what he said, but basically that was what he, and I think it's important for us to talk about the difference. We can all go up and down in our mood swings. And as a bumper sticker, I saw one of my favorite bumper stickers said, happiness is overrated. That there's something beyond how you're feeling. It's about who you're serving. Again, are you serving wealth or are you serving God? It's about devoting your life to a higher purpose and calling. And that's the source of hope in my life. And I think we need to proclaim that gospel to young people everywhere. Anyway, get out of our own heads a little bit. Ooh, yeah, Heather.
Thanks. Actually, this parable meant something to me. My career was in sales.
A little louder.
My career was in sales. It was premium pet food, that fancy pet food, the whole career. But so it wasn't like I was selling something bad. But here when it says, in order to save his job, he would go to the debtors and make deals with them, and then that would make it all right. I, for the longest time, my career was long, wondered about the ethics of that in my heart, of talking someone into seeing it my way in order to save my job. And this I was feeding my son. I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do, but it was very difficult to live like that. And I don't quite understand this parable about how to solve that.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing we can be sure of is that this is not a parable about business ethics. So you're off the hook there. I don't think that Jesus necessarily had a window on the modern world of capitalism and how all of that works. I think what he was talking about here was, if you think about what was one of the biggest oppressive factors in the life of an everyday person living in Jesus' time, it was overwhelming debt. And it was like a sharecropper economy. And you had a little piece of land that you rented, and you gave vast percentages of your produce to the owner. And it was an oppressive system. And so I can just see this twinkle in Jesus' eye as he kind of subverts that system a little bit by encouraging this guy to just give it all away. It's kind of a debt reduction program. It's kind of like Obama's reduce the mortgage on your principal on your mortgage so you can stay in your house. That kind of idea is, I think, what Jesus was it's a jubilee concept of forgiving debts. And rather than saying, oh, that's terrible for the economy, Jesus is saying, yeah, go. That's my take on it. Anyway, but I would say for you, in terms of your conscience with all that, remember that Jesus was crucified next to two thieves, right? And he said to the one, you'll be with me in paradise. That we all are called to live good, ethical lives, but we all screw up and we're placed in difficult positions and are forced to make difficult choices. And in the end, as we devote ourselves to Christ, we find forgiveness. And we got to believe that. It's not just a platitude. Forgiveness is real. Forgiveness is the fact of Jesus' existence. It's the truth of life, is that we are all forgiven. We're all good. We're all loved. It's all fine, And just remembering that is hard sometimes. We have time for one more. Bob Dickerson.
I would like to have a session of Stump the Priest very often. No, I think this is, I don't want to use the word relaxed, but we're hearing from people and from you about topics of the day, topics of the reading, putting them all together. And I think this would be something to continue, not every week, but maybe over a period of time.
All right.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Well, it's fine. It's a lot easier than writing a sermon. So thank you, Bob.